The flashbulbs were still popping when the question hit him. A young reporter, voice trembling with curiosity, leaned in as President Trump stood near the South Lawn, minutes from boarding Marine One. "Mr. President, do you still believe Representative Jasmine Crockett is, how you put it, very low IQ?" Trump didn't flinch. He adjusted his tie, flashed a grin, and leaned toward the mic. "I do. Between her and AOC, it's hard to say who's lower. We'll give them both a test. I aced mine, the Walter Reed cognitive exam. I'd like to see how they do." The laughter from a few supporters in the crowd was sharp, cold, but the reporters, silent. That's when the moment froze. Not because of the insult itself, America had heard this tone before, but because everyone knew Jasmine Crockett wasn't going to let this pass quietly. Back in her hometown, she was boarding a flight, her phone lighting up with pings. She glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. He said what? She didn't yell. She didn't blink. She just sat down slowly, heart racing, mind already forming her reply. The airplane cabin buzzed with noise, but Jasmine Crockett sat still. The window seat bathed her in early morning light. She wasn't scrolling anymore. She was writing, not a speech, not a press release. Something else, something real. Her fingers flew over her phone as she drafted a post for the world to see. Imagine being busy getting another honorary doctorate, and right before boarding your flight, learning that diabolical, delusional, demented dum-don was busy trying to challenge your IQ again. But then she paused. Breathe, she told herself. She backspaced. Only the insults. Not the message. Because this wasn't about him anymore. It was about every young girl who had been told she was too loud or too ambitious. It was about her mother, who had worked nights to send her to law school. It was about every voter who believed black women deserved respect, without having to prove their brilliance. She tapped send, then leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes, whispering, "Let's have the test, I'm ready." She didn't know it yet, but the whole country would be listening. By the time Jasmine landed, the hashtag was everywhere. Challenge. We stand with Crockett. Dementia is not a cue. Cable news picked it up before her luggage even hit the carousel. CNN showed the clip of Trump 3 times in an hour. Fox debated whether Crockett had gone too far by answering back. MSNBC invited 2 professors to discuss the difference between dementia tests and IQ tests. But Jasmine? She headed straight to a live interview. Wearing a calm smile and a crisp navy blazer, she looked into the camera with quiet force. "If the president wants a test, I'll take it. I've taken many. I graduated from Rhodes College. I hold a law degree. I fought for civil rights in courtrooms across Texas. My intelligence is not up for debate. But if he insists, I'll entertain him." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't mock. She just stood her ground, with dignity. And somewhere in Florida, watching from a Mar-a-Lago television, Trump folded his arms and frowned. He hadn't expected this. Not poise, not facts, not peace. But Jasmine wasn't finished yet. She was just getting started. Just hours after her interview aired, Jasmine's phone rang. She was still in the car, inching through D.C. traffic, when the name flashed across the screen. Rhodes College. Her alma mater. She answered, expecting a quick hello, maybe a show of support. Instead, the dean's voice came through, warm and firm. "Congresswoman Crockett, we just wanted you to know. The students are watching. They're inspired. And frankly, we are too." She smiled, quietly, the kind of smile that hides a storm of emotion behind it. "Thank you," she said. That means more than I can explain." They spoke for 2 minutes, maybe 3. But when she hung up, something shifted. This wasn't just about responding to an insult anymore. It was about showing the country what strength looks like when it comes wrapped in education, calm, and self-worth. Her staffer in the front seat turned to her. "You ready for this next interview?" Jasmine looked out the window, city lights dancing on her face. "Let's go," she said. Because the next stop wasn't just political, it was personal. Meanwhile, in another corner of the Capitol, Reppers Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was quietly watching. She'd seen the clip, she'd seen the hashtags, she'd been here before. But when a reporter caught her outside her office and asked for her response, AOC didn't bite. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't snap back. She just stood there, her voice calm. "I think we've reached a point where women, especially women of color, don't have to defend their intelligence every time someone tries to belittle them." Then she added softly, "Jasmine is more than capable of speaking for herself. I stand with her. Always. No fury, just facts and unity." It was a short clip, barely 30 seconds long, but it exploded online, not because of outrage, but because of grace. 2 women, unshaken, refusing to be pulled into chaos. And across the country, young women who had once doubted themselves were sitting up straighter. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a shift. Later that night, Jasmine returned to her hotel. She was exhausted, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. But as she kicked off her heels, her assistant handed her a small envelope. "No return address," they said. She opened it slowly, expecting hate, or worse. Instead, it was a handwritten note on lined paper. "Dear Jasmine Crockett, I'm 17. I live in Laredo. I've never seen someone like me on TV standing up like that. My mom and I watched you together." She cried. "I think, for the first time, I believe I can do something bigger than this town. Thank you." Jasmine held the letter close. She didn't cry, not yet. But she felt something rise in her chest, a sense of purpose, a reminder of why she started this journey. Not to win arguments, not to clap back, but to build something better. She looked out the hotel window into the quiet night and whispered to no one, This is what matters." The media kept asking, "Will you take the IQ test? Will you challenge Trump directly?" But Jasmine Crockett refused to turn her dignity into a circus. At a press briefing, a reporter tried again. "Congresswoman, would you actually sit and take a cognitive test next to the president?" She smiled gently. "If I were a clown, I might juggle for you too." Laughter, but not mocking. Truth wrapped in grace. This isn't about scores or showdowns. This is about service. I didn't run for Congress to prove my IQ. I ran to prove that leadership means listening, not labeling. She paused. "I've already passed the test that matters. It's called public trust." The room went quiet. Even journalists who came expecting a verbal fight now sat in stillness, nodding slowly. Jasmine walked off the podium without raising her voice once. Not a single insult, not a single jab, but somehow, she had said more than any test ever could. And in the back of the room, a young intern whispered to her friend, "That was power." The next morning, Jasmine received another letter. This time it was typed, short, firm, from a retired Marine. "Ma'am, I'm 72. I served 2 tours in Vietnam. I've voted Republican all my life. But what I saw this week, it changed something in me. You didn't flinch. You didn't attack. You just stood tall. That's leadership. Thank you for reminding us what quiet strength looks like." She read it twice, not because she didn't understand, but because she did. Her staff watched her carefully. She didn't speak. She didn't tweet. She folded the letter and placed it inside a small leather notebook she carried everywhere. "Let's keep going," she said. There were more interviews ahead, more town halls, more noise. But now, something was different. Because even people who didn't vote like her, didn't look like her, didn't agree with her, and they were listening. And that was the breakthrough, not in policy, but in heart. 2 days later, a reporter brought the question back to President Trump. Same setting, same chaos, same flashing cameras. "Sir, Rep. Crockett has responded. She says she'll take your test on one condition, that the test includes service, compassion, and truth. Do you have a reply?" Trump blinked, then shrugged. "She's trying to get attention. I've already shown I have the best brain. The doctor said it. The test says it. That's all." But this time, the response didn't land the same way. Not because his tone changed. It hadn't. But because hers had. Her response had shifted the tone of the entire conversation. What started as an insult had become a national lesson in composure. And for the first time, a few voices behind the cameras whispered something unexpected. Maybe we underestimated her. But Jasmine? She wasn't watching. She was back in Texas, standing in a classroom, and she was about to speak to the next generation. The chalkboard was clean. The kids were loud. Until Jasmine Crockett walked in. She wore no press badge, no entourage, just a blazer and her voice. This wasn't Congress. This was a public high school in Dallas, her old district. The students didn't clap right away. They weren't sure if they should. But Jasmine smiled and broke the silence. "Before I ever stood at a podium, I sat in desks just like these." She walked slowly across the front of the room, scanning young faces. "Somebody tried to measure me once, not by my work, not by my heart, but by a number, an IQ." She let that sit. "So I want to tell you something that nobody told me when I was your age." She pointed to the rows of kids. "You are not a number, not your grades, not your score, and definitely not someone else's judgment." And just like that, the class went quiet, a kind of silence that only comes when something hits deep. One student raised their hand. "How do you stay calm when they try to break you?" Jasmine paused, then answered softly, "Because I already know who I am." While Jasmine was inspiring students, the political world kept spinning. On conservative radio, some hosts doubled down. They defended Trump's words, called it just a joke, and accused Crockett of playing victim politics. But not everyone agreed. One retired judge, appointed by a Republican president, spoke on air that morning. "I disagree with Congresswoman Crockett on nearly everything. But what I saw from her this week wasn't politics, it was poise." Others began to follow. A pastor from Georgia, a businesswoman from Michigan, a farmer from Kansas. Each shared the same sentiment. "We don't have to agree to show respect." It wasn't a wave. Not yet. But it was something. A subtle shift in the way people were hearing her. Not as an opponent, but as a voice. And that voice wasn't yelling. It was leading. One listener wrote on Facebook, "I didn't change my politics, but I changed my tone." Thakur. Chapter 12. The call she didn't expect. That night, Jasmine was in her apartment, slipping off her earrings when her phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a call. From Rep. Liz Cheney. Jasmine answered, uncertain. The two had never spoken privately before. Liz got straight to the point. "I'm not calling to agree with you on policy, but I am calling to say, what you did this week, standing your ground without stooping low, that's rare. It mattered." Jasmine didn't speak at first. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she felt something deeper than pride. Validation. Not from a fan, not from a friend, but from someone on the other side who saw her clearly. They talked for just 5 minutes. No grand statements, no alliances. Just two women from different worlds, acknowledging one another's strength. And as the call ended, Jasmine looked at her own reflection in the window, the lights of DC glowing behind her. One voice, she whispered. One truth at a time. Back in Dallas, in a modest home filled with framed photos and the smell of baked cornbread, Jasmine's mother sat at the dinner table watching her daughter on TV. She didn't say much, just pressed her fingers together beneath her chin. Her sister on the couch whispered, "She handled it like Daddy used to, slow and steady." Their mother nodded, eyes glassy. "You know," she said softly, "when Jasmine was in middle school, a teacher once told me she was too outspoken, said she wouldn't go far if she kept talking back." She laughed gently, not bitterly. Turns out they were right about the first part. She talks back, but not with noise, with purpose. Across the country, families were having that same conversation. Daughters watching mothers, sons watching sisters, and a quiet pride settled into living rooms that had once only known frustration. Jasmine hadn't won anything. She hadn't fought. But in the stillness of her response, she had created something that lingered. Respect. The kind no headline could erase. 2 days later, President Trump stepped up to another press gaggle. He was asked again about Crockett, about the challenge, about the IQ debate, but this time he waved it off. "We've got bigger things to focus on: China, AI, real problems. Let's move on." And just like that, he did. The story faded from his lips. No apology, no retraction, just silence. But silence speaks too. To some, it meant he was done. To others, it meant he had nothing left to say. Either way, Jasmine didn't celebrate. She didn't tweet a victory lap. She didn't gloat. She just kept working. That morning, she spoke at a women's legal conference about equity and judicial access. No cameras, no shouting. Just her, standing before rows of women in suits, talking about the real test. Service without spectacle. And afterward, one young attorney whispered, "You showed us how to walk through fire and not even smell like smoke." Sunday morning came like a bomb. Jasmine sat near the back pew of a small Baptist church, her Bible in hand, her phone on silent. The choir sang soft hymns. No one rushed her. No one took photos. It wasn't about her. But after the sermon, the pastor paused and looked in her direction. "Sister Crockett, sometimes the enemy won't fight you with fists. He'll fight you with words meant to cut deeper." He closed his Bible slowly. "But the word tells us, when the storm speaks, don't shout back. Stand still. Let God speak louder." The congregation murmured in quiet agreement. Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes, not from pain, but release. Because for the first time since it all began, she let herself feel the weight of it, and the love that rose to meet it. Outside, a child approached her as she left. No question, no photo request, just a hug, and one whispered word: "Thank you." Capitol Hill was quiet that morning. Behind a closed door, Jasmine sat in a private session with senior congressional leaders. No cameras, no headlines, just voices. One Republican lawmaker, gray-haired, seasoned, spoke first. "Crockett, I've disagreed with almost every vote you've cast." He chuckled to himself. The room tensed. "But I watched how you handled this past week. And I want to say, I respect the way you stood your ground. No grandstanding, just grit." Jasmine nodded. "I didn't come here to be liked. I came to represent." The lawmaker leaned back. "You did both." Across the room, a moderate Democrat added, "This whole thing, it reminded us what leadership actually looks like when it's not trying to go viral. The moment wasn't warm, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and it meant something. In a place too often divided by party lines, someone had drawn a new kind of line, not left or right, but high or low. And Jasmine, she chose to rise. That night, alone in her office, Jasmine pulled out a yellow legal pad. She wasn't preparing a speech. She was writing to herself, her younger self, the girl who sat in the back of class wondering if she was too loud. The teenager who stayed up late helping her mom pay bills. The law student who cried alone in the library, wondering if she truly belonged. They will come for your voice, she wrote. They will try to measure you in inches, in decibels, in test scores, but your worth can't be counted that way. You are enough. You've always been enough. Tears hit the page before she could stop them. Not from weakness, from release. She folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, tucked between old campaign buttons and a photo of her father. And in the stillness, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." Because if that girl hadn't kept going, this week might never have happened. A week later, the headlines moved on. Cable news found a new controversy. Social media chased the next viral clip. But in one Texas district, something had quietly changed. At a town hall, a mother brought her daughter to the mic. The girl, no older than 9, stood shaking, holding a sheet of paper. "Ms. Crockett, I saw you on TV, and I wanted to say, I want to be like you, brave, but also kind." The room went still. Jasmine stepped forward, crouched to the girl's height, and looked her in the eye. "You already are," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you what you can't be, and never believe that someone else's words get to define your worth." The crowd clapped softly, not wild applause, but a moment of truth. No insults, no retorts, just a message that would outlast the noise. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight to be powerful. You just have to stand. And Jasmine Crockett did. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, or gave you hope for the next generation, please like, subscribe, and share. Drop a comment telling us, who is the one person who taught you to never let your worth be defined by others? Your voice matters, and just like Jasmine, you are enough.